Behind the facade of an ordinary suburban mother, Stacey Ruth Castor concealed a chilling secret. In the heart of upstate New York, Stacey lived a seemingly normal life. Born in 1967, she was known by her friends and neighbors as a dedicated mother to her two daughters. She first tied the knot in the mid-'80s with Michael Wallace. Together, they built a family and a life that, to the outside world, seemed picture-perfect. But after 15 years of marriage, tragedy struck when Michael passed away suddenly in the year 2000. Left a widow, Stacey was devastated, but eventually found love again. She married David Castor in 2003, hoping to start anew. However, under the veneer of this normalcy, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Just 2 years into her marriage with David, he too was found dead under mysterious circumstances. Questions began to surface. Whispers started to echo through the community. Could it really be a coincidence that both of Stacey's husbands had met such untimely ends? As investigators delved deeper, they unearthed a web of deceit and murder spun by the very hands that rocked the cradle. Stacey, the suburban mother, was suspected of orchestrating the deaths of her husbands, poisoning them with antifreeze. The media was quick to christen her the Black Widow, a moniker that seemed fitting for a woman who had allegedly turned matrimony into a death sentence. However, the true depth of her deception came to light only when a third victim emerged. As the web of the Black Widow started to unravel, it was clear that her deadly game was far from over. In 2005, David's death was initially believed to be a suicide. A man who seemingly had it all: a loving wife, a successful business, and a peaceful life in the suburbs of Syracuse, New York. But one fateful day, David was found lifeless in his bed. The scene was eerily quiet, disturbingly peaceful. A glass, half filled with a greenish liquid, sat on his bedside table. Nearby, a container of antifreeze was found, leading investigators to believe that David had drunk the toxic substance, ending his life. Yet something didn't quite add up. The suicide note, for instance, was peculiar. It was typed, not handwritten, and it lacked the personal touch, the raw emotion one would expect from a man bidding his final goodbye. It felt sterile, almost as if it were a business memo rather than a farewell letter. The crime scene, too, was strangely pristine. There were no signs of struggle, no evidence of anguish. The only disturbance was David's lifeless body, a stark contrast to the seemingly normal surroundings. As the investigation progressed, detectives found themselves questioning the initial theory. Could this be a case of suicide? Or was there something more sinister at play? They began to dig deeper, uncovering unsettling details and inconsistencies that pointed them in a different direction. David's stomach contents revealed a lethal dose of antifreeze, matching the substance found at the scene. But the toxicology report showed that the antifreeze had been consumed over several days, not in one fatal gulp. This suggested a slow, painful death, not the swift end typically associated with suicide. And then there was the glass. Fingerprints were found on it, but they didn't belong to David. They were smaller, more delicate. They belonged to a woman. Little did they know, the real killer was much closer to home. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered a chilling link to another death: Stacey's first husband, Michael Wallace. The plot thickened as the law enforcement's attention started to shift towards the past. It was a sudden turn of events when they decided to exhume the body of Michael Wallace, Stacey's first husband. A man who had passed away years before David Castor, under circumstances that were now starting to appear less than natural. It was a grim task, but one that was necessary to unravel the truth. As the autopsy report came in, the chilling reality hit like a cold winter wind. The forensic pathologists had found antifreeze in Michael Wallace's system. Yes, the same deadly poison that had taken David Castor's life was present in Michael's body. This discovery was more than just a coincidence. It was a glaring red flag, a signal that something was horribly wrong. Suddenly, the grieving widow's image started to crumble, replaced by the growing suspicion towards Stacey Castor. She had not just lost one husband, but two, and both under similar mysterious circumstances. The puzzle pieces were starting to fit together, painting a picture darker than anyone could have imagined. The question was no longer about what happened, but who was behind it. Investigators started to connect the dots. The same lethal substance, two husbands, and one common denominator: Stacey Castor. She was no longer just a grieving widow mourning the loss of her husband. She was now a prime suspect in a double murder case. Suddenly, Stacey Castor was not just a grieving widow, but a prime suspect. But the web of deceit didn't stop there. In a shocking twist, Stacey turned her murderous intent towards her own daughter. In a chilling turn of events, Stacey Castor's next target was none other than her own daughter, Ashley Wallace. Stacey's plan was as cunning as it was callous. She decided to frame Ashley for the murders she herself had committed. To accomplish this, Stacey spiked Ashley's drinks with a lethal concoction of prescription pills. The intention? To make it seem as though Ashley had taken her own life out of guilt for the murders. But Stacey didn't stop there. She crafted a suicide note, supposedly penned by Ashley, confessing to the murders of both her father and stepfather. The note was detailed, describing how Ashley had used antifreeze to poison her father and stepfather, mimicking the real method Stacey used. Stacey's plan, it seemed, was to let Ashley take the fall for her heinous crimes. However, Stacey's plan unraveled faster than she anticipated. Ashley survived her mother's attempt on her life, and the suicide note raised more questions than answers. It was too detailed, too specific. Investigators began to suspect that something was amiss. They questioned Ashley, who vehemently denied any involvement in her father's and stepfather's deaths. This led to further scrutiny of Stacey. Investigators began to piece together the disturbing puzzle. The suicide note, the antifreeze, and the suspicious deaths of two husbands all pointed towards one person, Stacey Castor. It was the failed frame-up of her daughter that ultimately led to Stacey's arrest. In a desperate bid to escape justice, Castor had tried to frame her own flesh and blood. The trial of Stacey Castor captivated the nation. As the courtroom drama unfolded, people watched with bated breath, awaiting justice for the chilling acts committed by the woman now known as the Black Widow. The prosecution presented a compelling case. They painted a picture of a woman driven by greed, willing to go to extreme lengths for financial gain. The evidence was damning. Autopsy reports confirmed the presence of antifreeze in both husbands' systems. It was revealed that Castor had been the primary beneficiary of life insurance policies and estates, further solidifying the motive. The prosecution didn't stop there. They also presented the suicide note allegedly written by Ashley, confessing to the murders. But handwriting experts testified that the note was, in fact, authored by Castor herself. This was the smoking gun, the piece that tied together the meticulously woven narrative of a murderous mother willing to frame her own daughter to escape punishment. The defense, on the other hand, had an uphill battle. They argued that Ashley had a motive to kill her stepfather, and that she had access to the antifreeze. They also questioned the reliability of the handwriting analysis. But their arguments seemed weak in the face of the mountain of evidence presented by the prosecution. After an intense trial, the jury returned with their verdict. Stacey Castor was found guilty of second-degree murder and attempted murder. She was sentenced to over 50 years in prison, ensuring that she would spend the rest of her life behind bars. The verdict brought a sense of relief and justice to the families of her victims and to a nation that had watched the trial with gripping interest. The aftermath of the trial saw Castor maintaining her innocence, despite the overwhelming evidence against her. She continued to claim that Ashley was the true culprit, even as her daughter started a new life, trying to erase the horrifying memories of her mother's actions. In the end, the woman dubbed the Black Widow was caught in her own web of lies and deceit. Her cunning plan, once seeming so foolproof, had unraveled, leaving behind a chilling tale of murder, betrayal, and a mother's unthinkable crimes against her own family.